In the quiet community of Pontypool, Wales, home to approximately 30,000 residents, lived Linda and David Maggs. Their residence at 11 Lansdowne in Sebastopol would become the setting for a story that unfolded gradually over many years. Linda had raised her two children, Carrie and Andrew, independently after her first marriage ended. She worked diligently to support her family, sometimes maintaining three separate jobs simultaneously. She was known for her dedication as a mother and her strong work ethic that carried her through challenging times. David, on the other hand, had experienced two previous marriages before meeting Linda. He had built his career as an accountant before eventually retiring. The two had initially met in 1977, began their relationship in 1988, and after many years together, they formalized their union in August of 2002. At this time, Linda's children, Andrew and Carrie, welcomed David into their family circle, and the couple embarked on what appeared to be the beginning of their life together. Linda, at 74 years of age, maintained a vibrant social life. She participated actively in a dance group and frequently attended dance clubs with her friends. She especially cherished her role as a grandmother, often taking her granddaughter shopping for clothing. Her home and garden were points of particular pride for her, and these spaces frequently served as gathering places for social events. Linda maintained close relationships with her two children, sharing a deep connection with them. She was consistently available to offer assistance or guidance whenever needed. Her son Andrew described her as a beautiful, kind lady with a huge heart. David, 71, had worked as an accountant before his retirement. The couple enjoyed traveling extensively together, visiting destinations including the United States and Australia. However, financial matters became a consistent source of tension between them. Prior to their marriage, David had requested that Linda sign a prenuptial agreement, which she declined. She believed that as a married couple, their assets should be shared equally. Despite this philosophy, after their marriage, they maintained separate bank accounts and even paid individually for their meals when dining out, an arrangement that Linda's daughter Carrie found unusual. Unlike Linda, David did not participate in her active social life. On the occasions when he would accompany her to dance performances and clubs, he would remain outside the venue smoking rather than engaging with the activities. In 2009, David became increasingly withdrawn after losing his driver's license due to his epilepsy diagnosis. Over the subsequent years, their marriage continued to deteriorate. Financial disagreements became more frequent, and neighbors occasionally overheard their arguments in the garden. By March of 2020, their relationship had broken down completely. When the coronavirus pandemic led to lockdown restrictions, David contacted his general practitioner and received prescriptions for sleeping tablets and antidepressants. His sister worried about his well-being, noting that he was not caring for himself properly. She regularly brought him food and checked on his condition. His daily activities consisted primarily of playing cards, watching films, and smoking. His health had been compromised for several years, as he had survived two heart attacks, spent 5 months hospitalized, and managed emphysema. The lockdown period was equally challenging for Linda. Having previously enjoyed a busy and social lifestyle, the inability to see others meant she spent most days alone in the upstairs portion of their home. Following David's heart attack in 2019, he had been referred to a counselor. His anxiety and depression were scored at 12, with scores above 8 warranting referral for treatment. In August, he requested an increase in his antidepressant medication, after which he reported feeling somewhat improved. In September of 2020, another financial disagreement created further strain on their already fragile relationship. David phoned his sister one evening, informing her that he and Linda had been arguing again, and asked her to come to the house. Upon her arrival, she observed that Linda appeared visibly stressed. The argument had once again centered on financial matters. Linda had stated firmly, "It's over. It's done." And David had responded simply, "Just go," before returning inside the house. 3 days following this incident, Linda apologized to David's sister for the argument. On September 16, 2020, Linda initiated divorce proceedings, citing unreasonable behavior as grounds for ending her marriage to David. After consulting with a lawyer, she was advised not to leave the home, and David similarly refused to move out. As a result, they continued residing together while leading separate lives. Linda declined to clean or cook for David any longer. David converted the downstairs area into a bedsit complete with a lock on his door, while Linda occupied the upstairs portion of the house. She had purchased locks for the doors, but had not yet installed them. As they shared bathroom and kitchen facilities, Linda described feeling as though she was being monitored by him. He would often sit outside the bathroom while she showered, waiting for her to emerge. An estate agent who visited to value the property described David as chain-smoking and visibly trembling during their interaction. David informed the estate agent that he would rather hurt his wife than lose anything. The estate agent characterized Linda as extremely timid when discussing the potential sale of the house as part of the divorce settlement. In November of 2020, David began working with a housing support worker who encouraged him to explore sheltered accommodation and rental options in preparation for the possible sale of the house. He expressed the same sentiment to the housing officer that he had shared with the estate agent, that Linda would not receive anything from him, even if it meant she would come to harm. He informed the support worker that she should contact the police as he had considered stabbing Linda. The support worker was sufficiently concerned that she consulted with her manager, who recommended contacting the police through the non-emergency line and notifying David's doctor. The doctor telephoned David that same day and increased his sleeping medication and antidepressants. After the support worker had made contact with them, police officers visited the home to speak with the couple. When David's sister answered the door, she later stated that she had been shocked by their arrival. She explained that the officers expressed concern for David's mental health, a concern she shared, describing him as a wreck and very depressed. David expressed surprise that his sister had contacted authorities, but indicated that he understood her reasons for doing so. He stated that he felt the officers had not listened to him properly, and that their visit had seemed unproductive. An officer spoke privately with Linda, conveying concerns about her safety. The officer later reported that Linda had seemed dismissive, believing this was simply David's strategy to remove her from the house, as the property was registered solely in his name. The officer noted that Linda declined both a domestic violence risk assessment and the option of emergency accommodation, stating that David had never laid a finger on her. The officer advised Linda to avoid arguments with David and to keep her phone within easy reach. No further action was taken at that time. By the beginning of the new year, the couple had ceased all communication. Financial investigators had become involved to examine the couple's financial situation. This development meant that the house would likely be placed on the market for sale. On February 5, 2021, Linda spoke with her daughter Carrie by telephone. During this conversation, she expressed worry about how David might react upon learning that their finances were being investigated. That same evening, David's sister called him around 9 o'clock and reported that he seemed settled and was enjoying watching a film. The following morning, February 6, 2021, at 13 minutes past 9, a disturbing emergency call was placed. David contacted emergency services, requesting both police and ambulance assistance. When asked what had happened, he admitted, "I stabbed her." He confirmed that he no longer had the knife in his possession and that Linda was lying in bed, but he was uncertain whether she was still breathing. When asked if they had argued, he did not provide a clear answer, but simply repeated his request for help. As officers and emergency personnel arrived at the scene, body cameras recorded their entry into the house. Upon entering, 2 knives were visible on the bottom step of the staircase. David was placed under arrest on suspicion of murder. During this process, he made several statements, including that Linda had tried to steal 2 houses from him. He also remarked, "30 years I've been married to her, and she doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut, so I topped her." His apparent lack of emotion was noted by the officers present. As news of the incident spread, community members left flowers outside the home, and Linda's children received support from officers as they processed this devastating development. The investigation soon revealed the sequence of events from that morning. Despite the upstairs being designated as Linda's private space, David had gone up there carrying 2 large red kitchen knives, leaving one outside the bedroom door and taking the other into her room. At approximately 9 o'clock that morning, as Linda lay in bed beneath the covers, David entered her room. He later stated that he had wanted to discuss their separation and pending divorce, but she had informed him that such conversations should be handled by their respective lawyers and declined to discuss the matter with him directly. This response apparently angered David, who then attacked her multiple times with the knife. Linda, who stood just 4 feet 10 inches tall, sustained 15 stab wounds to her neck, head, abdomen, and chest. Her arms and hands showed defensive wounds, indicating that she had attempted to protect herself during the attack. She had also suffered 2 broken ribs. One of the chest wounds measured 15.5 centimeters in depth. When investigators sought to understand the motivation behind this violent act, they discovered that David had become fixated on the belief that Linda had been concealing money from him and intended to defraud him during their divorce proceedings. As evidenced in the body camera footage, he told officers that she had attempted to steal 2 houses from him. A thorough investigation into the couple's finances found no evidence that Linda had hidden assets or attempted to secure an unfair settlement. However, investigators did discover that David maintained a savings account containing £14,000 that he had failed to disclose. David acknowledged that he had killed Linda, but claimed he had experienced a blackout and could not recall the attack. During interviews with investigators, he stated that while he had brought the knives upstairs, he had only intended to discuss financial matters and the divorce. He explained that he had left one knife outside the door in case he needed it. He also remarked, "She's only 4'10", but she can be a right madam." Police soon learned about his history of threatening to harm Linda, and another witness came forward with additional concerning information. A woman named Pamela, who had initially been friends with Linda before becoming friends with the couple, and then following a disagreement, maintained contact only with David, contacted investigators on February 18th. She explained that just a few weeks before Linda's death, during a telephone conversation with David about the divorce proceedings, he had stated, "I feel like I could stab her." When she pointed out that such an action would result in his imprisonment, he reportedly responded, "I don't care." David was held in custody and appeared at Newport Crown Court on February 8th, charged with murder. He entered a plea of guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, maintaining that he had experienced a blackout during the incident. Judge Michael Fritton presided over the trial at Cardiff Crown Court, which commenced on January 11, 2022. In his instructions to the jury, Judge Fritton explained, "It's admitted David Maggs killed Linda Maggs, but there is a dispute about the circumstances in which he killed her. There's a dispute about his mental state on the day he killed her, and there's a dispute about his responsibility for killing her." Defense lawyer Sarah Jones argued that David's mental health challenges and depression would have affected his judgment that day. She stated, "Evidence of his past health clearly points to something very, very wrong with his functioning at the time. I accept it does not excuse what he has done." Psychiatrist Dr. Nguyen Gil Apathy testified, "In my opinion, the degree of his impairment due to depression is significant. This is a case where there are clear and significant mental health problems. In my opinion, this is a case of diminished responsibility. However, there was not unanimous medical consensus, as another psychiatrist, Dr. Thomas Wynn, disagreed with this assessment, stating that he did not believe David Maggs suffered from depression. The court heard evidence that David felt he had been treated unfairly by his two previous ex-wives and was determined that Linda would not receive any portion of his assets. The prosecution informed the jury that Linda had been upset, frightened, and anxious in the period leading up to her death. She had told a friend that she was uncertain what her husband might be capable of doing. Another friend testified that Linda had described an argument that occurred when David had altered his will several years earlier, removing her entirely and deciding to leave everything to his son. This witness stated, "About 5 years ago, they were arguing about the will. She said she had to pick up an iron to defend herself." The witness also mentioned speaking with Linda the evening before her death, when they had discussed the divorce. Linda had expressed concern that David might lose his temper, but added that she did not believe he would harm her and that she could contact the police if necessary. The prosecution presented evidence that David had provided Linda an allowance of £30 per week and had told her, "No sex, no marriage, no nothing," meaning that financially she would need to rely solely on her pension. It was further alleged that David had become verbally abusive toward Linda, insulting her by calling her thick and stupid. Additional key witnesses, including the estate agent and housing officer who had observed David's behavior and heard his threats against Linda, provided testimony. Their accounts contrasted sharply with the image of the frail man who arrived at court in a wheelchair and struggled to enter and exit the prison transport vehicle. David's sister also testified about the garden argument from September 2020, stating that Linda had been the one to lose her temper, and that she had never witnessed her brother make violent threats until that particular confrontation. The prosecution lawyer characterized Linda's death as a vicious and repeated attack, The emergency call recording and police body camera footage were presented to the jury, providing a vivid impression of the events of that day. It was also noted that David had only claimed to have experienced a blackout after being reminded that he was under caution and that his statements could be used as evidence in court. After a day and a half of deliberations on February 1st, 2022, the jury rejected David's defense of diminished responsibility. On March 17th, he was found guilty of murdering his wife. 71-year-old David Maggs received a life sentence with the requirement that he serve a minimum of 20 years before becoming eligible for parole consideration. His defense lawyer, Sarah Jones, observed that given his age and health condition, regardless of the sentence length, he would likely spend the remainder of his life in prison. She conveyed his message to the court, expressing regret for his actions and wishing the events had never occurred. When delivering the sentence, Judge Michael Fritton described David as a self-centered, self-interested, bitter, and unpleasant man. He continued, "You would come to resent Linda in a whole variety of ways. You resented her still having a life, a social life, female friends, loving members of family. You resented her having the courage to stick up for herself and start divorce proceedings against you. I don't think you care about anyone other than yourself." During the sentencing hearing, Linda's son, Andrew, presented a victim impact statement. He said, "You claim you can't remember anything, but I don't believe you. When you do remember, I hope it torments you as it torments us. On your wedding day, I made a speech and welcomed you into the family. I wish I had never ever said those words. Throughout this whole process, you have not shown a single ounce of remorse, regret, or compassion. That does not surprise me. Mom always said you would never ever say sorry." Andrew also mentioned that Linda's headstone bore her maiden name, Minhen, rather than her married name, Maggs. On behalf of the family, appreciation was expressed to the police officers involved in the investigation, as well as to the witnesses and court personnel. Without all your hard work, dedication, support, and understanding justice for Linda would not have been possible. For Linda's bereaved loved ones, being denied the opportunity to say farewell has been profoundly painful. The loss of such a kind and devoted woman under such terrible circumstances has created an emptiness that cannot be filled. Linda's memory continues through those who knew and cherished her, and she will always be remembered as a dedicated mother, grandmother, and friend.